When a man thinks about intimacy, there is often an unspoken craving for moments where his partner steps in and completely shifts the balance of control, not in a way that takes away from his masculinity, but in a way that amplifies the trust and the rawness between them. Because for so long, the cultural script has said men are always supposed to lead, always supposed to initiate, always supposed to be the ones setting the pace. And yet, when a partner decides to take over, when she makes the move without hesitation, it creates an electric spark that says she not only desires him, but she wants to take ownership of that moment. And that shift can be intoxicating because it breaks the monotony of routine and injects a sense of surprise and intensity that he secretly hopes for but rarely voices. There is something deeply primal in being guided by someone else's hands, being positioned without having to think or plan, being told through body language that he doesn't have to steer this time. And that level of control coming from his partner communicates not only confidence but desire, because when she pushes him back against the bed, when she climbs on top with absolute certainty, when she takes his wrists and pins them down even for a moment, it's not just playful roughness. It's a message that she wants him enough to claim him. And men may not often admit how powerful that feeling is, but it leaves a lasting mark that soft moments alone can't always provide. The hidden craving lies in the contrast, because men are conditioned to believe their worth is tied to being in charge, being the one who initiates. But inside there's a quiet longing for freedom from that role, and when a partner takes control, it feels like a weight being lifted, an invitation to let go, an opportunity to be vulnerable without fear of weakness. And what makes it even more exciting is that rough element of control, the way a strong grip, a commanding kiss, or a sudden assertive move bypasses words and goes straight to instinct. And instinct is where real intimacy comes alive. Think about the rush he feels when his partner locks eyes and makes the first bold move. The way adrenaline kicks in because the usual script has been flipped, and suddenly he's not calculating what comes next, but simply surrendering to the pace that's being set. And that surrender is not about losing power. It's about finding thrill in giving it up for a moment, because trust has been built to such a level that he can release control and still feel completely secure. And that paradox of being both desired and directed at the same time is what makes control such a powerful craving. This kind of roughness isn't about aggression without care. It's about deliberate energy, the intentional way she grips his face when she kisses him, the way she pushes him back into the pillows, the way she doesn't hesitate to dictate the rhythm. And that certainty is what he craves deep down, because certainty tells him she's not afraid of her own desire. She's not holding back to play polite, and that unleashing of energy feeds into his own excitement and creates a cycle where both are lifted higher than if only one side was driving the experience. And that cycle becomes addictive because it feeds on trust and intensity equally. The fantasy of being overtaken, of having a partner who doesn't just respond but initiates with strength, becomes a craving because it's rare, and what is rare often becomes powerful. And every time it happens, every time he's on the receiving end of that firm control, it deepens his attachment to her confidence, because confidence in the bedroom translates into attraction outside of it. And he sees her as not only a lover, but as someone who has the courage to step fully into what she wants. And that courage creates respect that lingers long after the moment fades. At the heart of this craving is the need for intensity that balances tenderness, because control doesn't erase softness. It magnifies it by showing contrast, the same way silence makes sound more meaningful. And when his partner takes control with a rough edge, when she decides to own the moment and let him feel what it's like to be wanted with unapologetic force, the chemistry created is unlike anything that comes from predictable repetition. And it is in that unpredictability that passion becomes unforgettable. There is a side of intimacy that men rarely speak about openly, the craving for passion that carries a little bit of edge, because while tenderness and affection hold a special place, there's an undeniable magnetism in the moments when touch becomes a little rougher, when kisses become hungrier, and when bodies collide with a raw intensity that feels unfiltered and real. And this is not about pain or going too far, but about creating a level of stimulation that heightens every sense. Because when a partner pulls his hair, digs nails gently into his back, or grips him tightly, it awakens something primal in him that feels impossible to replicate in softer moments. Men often want to feel that energy, the kind that says passion is too strong to be contained, that desire is so overwhelming it can't stay neat or polite, and when his partner shows that level of hunger through physical intensity, it reassures him that he is deeply wanted, not just loved but desired in a way that feels urgent. And that urgency is thrilling because it creates a sense of being consumed, of being irresistible in that moment. And that validation strikes deeper than words ever could because the body communicates it with actions that leave scratches, marks, and memories that linger beyond the bedroom. When a partner grips his shoulders firmly, bites down gently in the heat of a kiss, or scratches down his chest, it's not about causing harm, but about creating sensation that cuts through the ordinary. And the body responds to that intensity by flooding with adrenaline and endorphins, which is why roughness feels so addictive because it's tied to both physical arousal and emotional connection. And in those moments, men feel completely immersed, not distracted, not thinking, but fully lost in the intensity of the experience. And that total immersion is something he secretly craves more than he lets on. It's the contrast that makes it powerful, the shift between soft touches and sudden roughness, the surprise of a passionate grab after a slow caress, the gasp that comes when nails run down his skin after gentle strokes, because that dynamic keeps intimacy alive. It keeps it unpredictable, and unpredictability is the fuel that prevents desire from becoming routine. And when his partner isn't afraid to cross into that primal energy, to embrace a little wildness, it shows she's comfortable unleashing her own passion without hesitation, and that freedom creates an atmosphere where he feels encouraged to do the same. This craving is not rooted in violence but in trust, because only with trust can someone allow that level of rough passion. Only with trust can someone enjoy the thrill of being gripped tightly or pulled closer without fear. And when men feel that trust with their partner, they long for that intensity more often. Because it doesn't just stimulate the body, it deepens emotional intimacy too, showing that both can let go of inhibitions and meet each other in a place that is raw and unfiltered. And men often dream of that connection, even if they don't have the words to ask for it directly. The roughness also communicates confidence because when a partner isn't afraid to hold tighter, to bite, to scratch, or to pull, it reveals a comfort in her own desire that is deeply attractive. It shows she's not second-guessing what she wants, but is living fully in the moment. And that confidence is magnetic because it reassures him that passion is shared, that he's not alone in the intensity, and that dual energy transforms ordinary intimacy into an experience that lingers long after it's over, because memories tied to sensation always carve themselves deeper. At the core of this craving is the desire for authenticity, because rough passion feels real, it feels unscripted, it feels like a raw expression of hunger that can't be dressed up or hidden, and that authenticity creates moments that stand out. Moments where both are not performing but simply unleashing what they feel. And men secretly crave that wildness not because it replaces tenderness, but because it complements it, making intimacy multidimensional and unforgettable. And that craving for intensity, for passion that leaves marks and breathless pauses, is one that lives quietly inside many men, even if they never say it out loud. One of the deepest desires men carry when it comes to intimacy is the craving for the unexpected, because routine, while safe and comfortable, has a way of dulling intensity over time. And even if everything feels loving, predictability can strip away some of the spark that once set the connection on fire. So when his partner surprises him with sudden kisses, bold touches, or an unplanned move that completely shifts the energy, it creates a rush that can't be replicated in planned encounters. And that rush is addictive because it taps into excitement, into mystery, into the thrill of never knowing what is about to happen next. And men quietly crave that surprise because it reminds them of the first stages of passion when everything felt unknown and every moment was filled with wonder. When a partner suddenly pushes him back against the wall in the heat of the moment or kisses him in a way that takes his breath away without warning, it flips a switch inside that tells him this isn't just routine, this is passion that refuses to be contained. And that feeling of unpredictability floods him with adrenaline and desire because it awakens the part of him that doesn't want to think, plan, or predict, but simply react to the raw energy being shared. And in those seconds, all the distractions of the outside world fade, and all he can feel is the immediacy of the connection, the fire of spontaneity that sparks an even deeper bond. Men crave that unpredictability because it makes them feel chosen in the moment. It sends the message that desire hit so suddenly his partner couldn't hold back. And that validation is incredibly powerful because it assures him he is wanted beyond logic or planning. And that kind of unfiltered passion stirs something primal that can't be achieved when intimacy feels rehearsed or routine. And even if he doesn't say it out loud, deep down, he hopes for those moments when she takes initiative in unexpected ways, because those are the moments that carve themselves into memory and stay vivid long after the night is over. Surprise ignites desire in a way that routine never could, because it breaks the brain out of its patterns and shocks it into awareness. And when she does something unpredictable, whether it's a sudden bold touch, a playful grab, or a kiss that turns into something more intense without warning, his body reacts instantly, and that reaction heightens the experience far beyond what a predictable script could do. And this is why men secretly crave the unexpected, because it brings spontaneity back into intimacy and makes everything feel alive, raw, and full of energy again. It's also about the excitement of losing control of the script, because men are often expected to lead, to plan, to guide every step of intimacy. But when the unexpected happens, that pressure dissolves, and instead he is caught in the moment, forced to react rather than direct. And that reaction is exhilarating because it feels authentic and unscripted, and that authenticity is the core of what makes intimacy meaningful, because in the moments of unpredictability, both are showing their truest selves without hesitation or performance, and that honesty builds trust and passion at the same time. Unexpected passion also deepens attraction because it communicates boldness and confidence. It shows that his partner is comfortable enough in her own skin to disrupt the pattern, to take the lead without fear of rejection. And that level of confidence is magnetic because it tells him she isn't afraid of desire. She isn't afraid of unleashing it suddenly. And that unleashing makes him feel not only desired, but chosen in a way that is raw and undeniable. And men crave that feeling because it reassures them that intimacy is not just an act, but a real, living spark that cannot be contained. At the heart of this craving for the unexpected is the desire to feel intensity without warning, to be caught off guard by passion so strong it doesn't wait for the right time or place, because those are the moments that feel most real, the moments that replay in his mind long after they end, and men secretly long for that unpredictability. Not because they don't appreciate routine, but because unpredictability keeps intimacy alive. It keeps desire burning with freshness, and it reminds them that passion is not about schedules or plans, but about being overwhelmed by raw connection that takes over without hesitation. There is a part of intimacy that men quietly crave, which is the dance of resistance and teasing, the push and pull that creates tension so thick it feels like fire in the air, because passion isn't always about giving in immediately. Sometimes it's about delaying gratification, about building pressure until it's almost unbearable. And when a partner adds that rough, playful resistance, when she pushes him back even as she pulls him closer, When she teases him with touches that stop too soon, it creates a storm of desire that only grows stronger with every second, and men often crave this because the waiting, the resistance, makes the eventual release feel explosive in a way that soft, uninterrupted passion rarely can. That teasing resistance is not about rejection, it's about play, about making him chase even when he already knows he's wanted, and that chase flips on something primal inside, reminding him of pursuit, reminding him that attraction is not just given but earned in the moment. And when his partner resists just enough to build anticipation, it creates a heightened sense of urgency because every part of him wants to break through that resistance, and every pause makes his craving deeper, and that slow burn of tension is what turns ordinary passion into an unforgettable experience because he's not just involved physically, but mentally and emotionally pulled into the game. When she grips his hands to hold him back, when she pushes against him with strength only to pull him in closer seconds later, when she whispers no with her body while everything about her says yes in energy, the teasing contradiction drives him wild because it blurs the line between control and surrender, and men crave that blur, that feeling of not being certain what comes next, because uncertainty fuels adrenaline, and adrenaline fuels attraction, and attraction at that level consumes the entire moment, making it impossible to think about anything else but the heat of the push and pull. The resistance also amplifies desire because it shows investment. It shows that she's willing to engage in the game rather than just go through the motions, and that engagement is magnetic because it makes him feel like passion is something alive, something being built together rather than something flatly shared. And men long for that kind of energy, the kind that tells them their partner is not only willing, but excited to spark tension, to build suspense, to play with control until both are caught in a moment that feels bigger than either could create alone. And that craving lives deep because it transforms intimacy into something immersive. Teasing is powerful because it makes the mind work overtime. Because when she pulls away right when he leans in, when she gives just enough to keep him wanting more, the mind amplifies every detail, every touch feels magnified, every kiss feels sharper, and every second of waiting builds desire rather than weakens it. And men crave that sensation of longing that builds until it cannot be contained, because the longer the tension lasts, the more satisfying the release becomes. And that cycle of resistance turning into surrender is what makes these moments unforgettable. The push and pull also allows men to feel both dominant and vulnerable at once, because the act of chasing puts him in pursuit, but the act of being held back or resisted puts him in submission. And that duality is intoxicating because it allows him to experience both sides of passion without needing to choose. And in that mix, intimacy becomes richer, layered, and far more exciting than one-sided encounters. And men secretly hope for this because it makes them feel the full spectrum of intensity, from control to surrender, from resistance to acceptance, all wrapped in one. At the core of this craving is the undeniable truth that passion thrives on tension, and the rough edge of teasing resistance keeps that tension alive, because without tension, passion fades into routine. But with it, passion becomes unpredictable and unforgettable, and men crave this playful battle, this push and pull, because it makes every moment feel heightened, because it makes intimacy feel like more than just connection. It makes it feel like a storm, wild and consuming, and the memory of that storm is what lingers long after the night has ended. One of the most overlooked cravings men carry in the bedroom is the desire for vocal affirmation during moments of rough passion, because while touch and movement say a lot, the sound of a partner's voice has the power to amplify everything. It creates an atmosphere where energy doesn't just stay physical, but spills into the senses in a way that makes passion impossible to ignore. And when men hear moans, whispers, or even words of command, it fuels the fire inside them. It validates that the intensity is shared, and it reassures them that what's happening is not one-sided but deeply mutual. There is something electric about sound that touch alone cannot create. because sound lingers in the air. It echoes in the mind, and it makes the body respond even more strongly. And when his partner lets out a gasp, a sharp breath, or a commanding phrase, it transforms the moment into something cinematic, something vivid. And men crave that because silence, though intimate in its own way, sometimes leaves room for doubt. But sound removes doubt instantly. It declares desire without hesitation, and that declaration feels like fuel poured straight onto the fire of passion.